In this video, I'm sharing 5 essential tips to help you choose the right watercolor paper. Whether you're a beginner or a seasoned pro, these tips are going to guide you towards better results in your watercolor journey. Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we're tackling a crucial topic for all watercolor artists, and that is the role of sizing in watercolor paper. So if you've ever struggled with your paint kind of blooming or maybe not glazing well, sizing might be the missing link. It's that magical treatment on paper that can make a big difference in how your colors flow and interact. So let's dive in. You're going to want to stick around to the end because I'm going to share with you how I painted this one, and I'm testing out this new paper that I got from Amazon, and it was super cheap, like $4.99 for 20 9x12 sheets. And I got some smaller ones which were 4x6, and it was 90 sheets for $4.99. So heck of a deal, maybe. So let's talk about the first thing. The first thing you want to do is look for acid-free paper. You want to choose acid-free watercolor paper, and that's going to ensure that it will resist yellowing and deterioration over time. This is especially important if you plan to sell or display your artwork. For this particular project, I mean, I knew this wasn't expensive paper, so I figured, well, let's just go ahead and give it a try and see how it's going to go. Number 2, check the weight of the paper. That's a big indicator of how well it's going to hold water. Generally, like the heavier papers, like 300-pound cold press paper can handle a lot more water without it warping. And you will see as I struggle with this one, this lighter paper does tend to buckle. Even the 140-pound is pretty good with arches, but it does have a little bit of a tendency to buckle a little bit more. That 300-pound weight paper is really stiff and it can really take a lot of water. So if you struggle with that, try the 300. It is more expensive than the 140-pound cold press paper though. So, I mean, you have to kind of keep everything in mind. If you're just starting out, you're a beginner and you're learning, good paper is very important, but as you're just learning how maybe to paint in itself and you don't want to spend a lot of money on some of the good paper, inexpensive papers like Legion paper is really good. Even Canson, I mean, it's not my favorite, but it will do the job. But I will say, I say this to my students all the time, if you don't want to be frustrated with your watercolor paper, get the good stuff, because you really learn how paints work, how they absorb, how much water you need to use. I mean, it's a whole learning process. And if you're trying different paper, you're going to have a different turnout for each one. So check the weight. Number 3, explore the different textures. There are a number of textures that the paper will affect how the sizing behaves. So for like rough paper, it holds onto more water, where a hot press paper will create a real smooth wash. I don't often use a lot of hot press paper because I like the texture, especially with my seascapes, the texture in the paper itself. So experiment with the different textures and find out what's going to work best for you. If you like that smooth look, if you're doing floral paintings, things like that, you might prefer the hot press. Pen and ink works really well on hot press paper as well. Number 4, consider the sizing type. There are 2 main types of sizing. There's internal and external. And internal sizing helps control the water absorption, where the external sizing is going to affect the surface layer a little bit more. So look for papers that have good internal sizing if you want to do glazing. And then tip number 5 is read the reviews. It's sometimes a little bit difficult on places like Amazon, much better on like Blick or Cheap Joe, something like that. But if you are unsure about the paper's performance, just check online reviews. Maybe you can request samples sometimes, but testing a few sheets can really help you gauge how the sizing is going to work for you in a specific painting style. So this is the paper that I purchased online for really inexpensive. You can see the 4x6 is only $5.99. The 9x12 for 20 sheets was $5.99. I think I bought it for $4.99. It was on sale when I bought it, but still a really good deal. And I thought, why not check it out? So I did kind of dig into what they had to say online about it. It did say that it's cold pressed paper, which I'm used to using cold pressed paper. It's also multi-purpose paper. That's kind of a little cue sometimes when you have multi-purpose paper. It's very thin and very light. So this was a little bit lighter. It supposedly is around 140 pounds, but it seems to be lighter than that. And I could tell right away the water is not really seeping in. So it definitely does not have much for sizing. Look at that. You can see where it was dry, better where it's dry. I got a little bit more control, but you can see that burst of color and it just kind of blooms out everywhere where I have that water. And you know, watercolor paper will do that to some extent, but not quite this much blooming. With a little yellow. Look at that. Nice bloom. Oop, it's a fat tree. Mixing a little bit of that in there. I'm going to see how long this takes to dry. It's obviously very wet here. What color is this one? This is like my purple. Ooh. Purple and yellow. Bad color combo together, Kelly. I didn't think that through, but it's all right. Just going in order here. A red. Okay, it's a pink. A little pink down there. So you can see the texture a lot, which I don't mind. I don't mind texture. It stays in place pretty good. It's still wet down in here, so it's not absorbing a whole lot. Let's go with a brighter red. Nice little mixture and still wet, just so I can see how much this is going to move and drip. I'm going to have to try a seascape all on here, I think. Next one. Get a little bit of that color down the bottom there. Ooh. So yeah, so it's got a little bit of a buckling. I can see that it's got a little bump here. I might have to try it again and, you know, tape it down. If I do a seascape, I'll do that with it. Let's go a little bit of green. Actual color of a tree. This is a bright green. Okay, and then let's finish it off with a nice blue. The tall one up here. So it's dry over here. Let's just see. Ooh, look what that one's doing. It's like a little root sticking out. Let me come down a little bit more. Okay, so it kind of rolls. I noticed that down in here, the color has really faded because it's holding the water, and I've got a little puddle going on here. So I'm gonna take a tissue and just lift that up a little bit because I've got a little puddle. Now this probably won't puddle if I had it taped down. I'm going to have to try it again, but the initial for, I mean, what it is and great for practice, you know, not too shabby. I've got a lot of texture in this lighter area. So I think if I try this with a seascape, you know, and then see how the texture is going to work, working, you know, with like some gouache or being able to add a little bit of rough seas or rocks, things like that might be a little different, but overall, I mean, you know, not bad for inexpensive paper. Again, it is buckling a little bit. But let's go ahead and I'm going to dry it and just see what it does once it's dry. Okay, so it does buckle a little bit, but I dried both sides. It's a little warped, but not bad. I mean, I've done that with my Arches paper as well. So I think it's still too new to decide. I'm not sure if I just had maybe too much water or how the water reacted, but it was super wet down here. I think I'm gonna try just a little second one with a smaller, and let's tape this one down just so I can give it a fair chance here. I think I wrote on that one. I think this is the side. This one actually looks a little bit softer on this side. What side did I pick? That was the softer side. That's the more textured side. So let's go with this side. I'll try the other side and let's tape it down. And I'm going to use my TSS art tape. I want to see how this works too on here. If it's going to pull the paper. Or not. I almost feel like I should have started with a small one first. Done a couple little tests, but I just jump right in. You know me. Well, I don't plan things out very often. I think that's I'd say the little squirrel in me. I just do whatever I want to do when I want to do it. Okay, so let's try it again. I'm going to use a little bit less water this time. Of course, it's a smaller scale. Let's try a nice shade of an olive green. All right, so I want to see if I can darken this down in here a little bit more. So I'm just going to pump that up a little bit with some color. I want to see how this is going to dry. Let's just do some different shades of green for this one. And I'm going to try not to put too much water on my brush because obviously I have water down here. So I'm going to go with a little bit thicker paint. Okay, so it's a little bit better. It's not quite as wet. And I'm curious as to how long it's going to take this to dry. Like, you know that I always speed things up. I use my blow dryer a lot. So, depending, again, we talk about this all the time, your dry time, and that's a tricky thing to get down. How much time do I have while I'm working with my watercolors? And it's going to depend on your paints. It's going to depend on your paper mostly, and also how much pigment you're picking up, how much water you have, right? So those things are important, and those things are stuff that you have to practice and try out your different materials to see what you're going to get for a result. And then I laugh because the result could be different. Did I just do the same color? I did. The result could be different depending on, is it summer? Is it more humid that day? A little tall one in there. So there's a lot of things that change that up. I love colorful trees, they're fun. Let's try a little dry brush on the bottom once this is dry. I kind of want to just sit and just watch it and see how long it's going to take. Now this one, it's like I said, this is pretty dry over here. This obviously is still quite wet, but I was just in there. So, I think we started, a couple minutes ago. So it doesn't take that long to dry, but I think the more wet you have it, you can see a little water just on the outskirts here. So it's not absorbing it quite as much as what some of the better papers like Arches does. It tends to want to sit on top a little bit more. But the color is much better on this one. It was very light. It was very watery on that first one. I just didn't have enough. I had too much water, or I didn't have enough pigment. But the pigment's pretty dark, pretty strong up on top. So interesting. All right, let's dry this. Okay, with that being wet, I will say it does tend to buckle a little bit more than what the Arches is doing. even with it dry. I just smeared that again up top because I had it on my finger. The painting was dry. That's all right. Make a bird, right? Bring a tree up. We'll do that. Put another tree in there because I drive myself crazy. Can't let it go. Let's see. I think it was this color right here we had. Let's just bring it up a little bit more. Yeah, never happened. Okay, so that's okay if that's wet because I'm not going to go there. So I'm going to just put in maybe a little rock down the bottom here. Ooh, let's just do a little, like somewhat island on here. And so you can see I went over the color with this one. So that's interesting. I can still darken that a little bit more. Getting some texture down in there just to see what that's going to do. I'll have to tell you this. I'm not super finicky with my supplies usually. I'm like, I will use it. I'm not like super, you know, some people are like, oh, I can't use that. It's super finicky. I'm just like, whatever I need, whatever I do, I can do with coffee grounds. It doesn't matter. Tea. And so I kind of just figure out how stuff works and then how I can utilize it with what it is. So that is a little bit darker with the pigment. This is still wet, so I just want to see what that's going to do. I'm going to have to dry that and see if I can add some white on top of it. So that's interesting. You do lose some of the texture as you layer it, that's interesting. My bleed-proof white. Let's see, activate it a little bit. I don't want it to be really runny. Oops, tap off the excess. And let's see if we can create a little bit of rock action. So you can see that it does definitely have its texture. I don't like the texture as much because it looks more dotty. Usually when I do this and I scratch it on my Arches paper, it's not quite that perfect. So you can see it's, even though there's texture on there, it's actually a soft texture. It doesn't have a whole lot of tooth, even though it looks like it's very toothy when it's dry. Let's go in. I'm going to go in with some more of the black. Let's just create a few little rocks down in here. As I said, it works. I think it's going to be a good one, like for, you know, card making or for practice. It's just not the same, and that's okay. I didn't expect that it would be like Arches, but I can work with it. And I think it just takes, like I said, a little bit of practice, and you have to work with what it is. I know I don't have a lot of texture. And that's why one of my favorite things about the 140 cold press is all that texture that it creates. So you can see it's very distinct lines. Let's see if I can go back in with a little bit more white. So I think I would have to layer it maybe a little bit more. If you can't get the texture, make it with your finger. Let's do a little reflection down below, shall we? Oops. A little bit of water. Now see, that's interesting. I reactivated it. What's that going to do? Let's go with the reflection of the colors that we've got in there. Again, I just made it wet. Just going back through and adding a little bit. Whoops. Okay, let's dry it. I almost feel like I need a blue background now. No way. Ooh, that's hot. Burn my freaking fingers. Made lasagna earlier and I already burnt myself once. Jeez Louise. Okay, maybe add a little bit of white down in here for a little bit of reflection in the water. Let's color it a little bit. You know what? This is silly, but I need to have a little black down there because the rocks are going to reflect too, right? That was brilliant. So let's put a little rock in here. Okay. So let's go ahead and try. I want to see, because this I reactivated that black quite heavily. So I'm going to see if I cover this up with another wash on top, how it's going to react with a wash. Put some water in here. And see, look at that. It did. Look at how it reacts. Now that is interesting. Normally when I dry something and go over it, my Rosa paints don't react to it. So that is interesting. I'm going to just make it a little foggy day. We've got some nice color in there. So that is why you test your products, because you don't know what they're going to do all the time. So I do a little watermark here from when I went back in. I'm curious now. I'm going to go in with another color over top of this. Let's put another one right here over the top. Put it up front. So it's definitely different. Definitely. And that is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just a different thing. All right, so that worked a little bit better. Yeah, I got it where I have a little bit of detail in there. But it's still very, very puffy. I'm gonna dry it again. Boy, that's still hot. Maybe I had that too close. This is a heat tool and not a blow dryer, keep in mind. And the heat tool, I like it because it doesn't blow the air quite as hard, but it does get hotter. I'd say maybe there's not a lot of sizing in that, and it's not absorbing the paints. It's not sucking them up. It's just kind of sitting on the top, and so therefore it's reactivating. That could be part of it. But you know what? For $4.99, I mean, heck, it's an interesting paper. It did somewhat lift a little bit there too. But again, for what it is and the cost of it, great for practice. Now keep in mind, I always tell you that get the best paper that you can afford, because paper does make a difference, and you can see right here why. And it doesn't handle the same way. And sometimes when you're a new painter, you can get a little frustrated more so. So I've had a lot of practice, so I know I can stop here or add more water or don't add any more water. I have a nice little bloom effect that happened here, and that was just for me going around. So than what it does when I'm using my Arches paper. So again, my review is, it's a great paper for practicing, playing around, maybe mixed media. But it's not bad. It's certainly not great. It's not Arches, or Arches, if I were to say it correctly, which I never do. So yeah, so I hope that helps you guys. Again, it's not bad. I'll use it. I'll use up my 120 sheets that I have for sure. And I think the more I practice with it and see what it's going to do and how it reacts, I might even try some other paints with it, and just do a little play around with it. I don't even know here. Let me do it on this one here. Just using my little pen just to see. The pen works great on it. This is the G4. I think that even might be able to create, I was missing that texture and a little bit more detail in there. That seems to do a good job. So if I want to add a little bit more rocks to it, that's going to do the job. So yeah, all in all, how many times am I going to say that? I think it's doable, guys. I think it's doable. All right, hope that helps. Let me know if you order it too. I'm curious. I'm curious to see what you think, and I'm going to continue to play around with it. Have a good day. Bye.